Welcome to Arizona Sun-Times Sunday for November 6, 2022. I'm Michael Patrick Leahy, CEO and Editor-in-Chief of the Arizona Sun-Times. We're a rapidly growing news site on the web at arizonasuntimes.com. That's arizonasuntimes.com. We report on state and local news here in Arizona from a constitutional conservative perspective. Well, it's just 2 days until the 2022 midterm elections, and all eyes are on Arizona, where there are two bellwether elections: Republican nominee Kari Lake versus Democrat nominee Katie Hobbs in the gubernatorial race, and GOP challenger Blake Masters versus incumbent Democrat U.S. Senator Mark Kelly in the U.S. Senate race. We'll hit the highlights of both races in this program. But first, let's start with the gubernatorial race, where there was a burglary that has played a role in that race. The Phoenix Police Department announced last week that Daniel Mota dos Reis, age 36, was arrested last Wednesday in connection with the burglary of Democrat gubernatorial nominee Katie Hobbs' campaign headquarters. Quote, on October 25, 2022, Phoenix police officers were dispatched to a commercial burglary call in the area of Central Avenue and Virginia Avenue. When officers arrived, they learned from the reporting party that an unknown man broke into their building the night before and stole multiple items. End quote. This, according to a police report shared with the Arizona Sun-Times. The crime occurred on a Monday when surveillance video captured Dos Reis leaving the commercial building in the evening. He reportedly stole an Apple keyboard, an Apple computer mouse, and a black Nikon camera worth $1,180 in total. On that Wednesday, a patrol officer saw images of the footage showing Dos Reis, who the officer recognized as a suspect arrested earlier that day for a separate commercial burglary. He was still in jail for that separate crime and was about to be released before the officer contacted the jail, and Dos Reis was rearrested. The stolen items were then returned. Authorities booked him into Maricopa County Jail on one count of third-degree burglary. His bond currently sits at $5,000. He had a court appearance on this issue on Wednesday, November 2nd. Dos Reis is a repeat offender. His booking on October 26 was for several other charges, including criminal trespassing and burglary and assault. The Arizona Sun-Times reached out to the Phoenix Police Department and Maricopa County Sheriff's Office for additional details, but neither had more information they could share with us on the case. According to his Facebook page and his LinkedIn page, Dos Reis has worked as an accountant and content manager. Moreover, he is an immigrant from Luanda, Angola, and reportedly is a self-proclaimed Democrat. However, one company Dos Reis listed as a former employer on his Facebook account, which wished to remain anonymous, told the Sun-Times they had no record of Dos Reis ever working for them. The Arizona Sun-Times reached out to other past employers and to ICE to confirm his previous employment eligibility and citizenship status, but did not get a response by press time. The controversy began when Hobbs' campaign responded to the break-in last Tuesday, insinuating that her Republican opponent, Kari Lake, and her allies were responsible for the attack by, quote, spreading dangerous misinformation and including threats against anyone they see fit. In response to that statement, Lake said this situation sounded, quote, like a Jussie Smollett Part 2, end quote. Even after the arrest was made public, Hobbs still took shots at Lake for suggesting the incident was staged and refusing to condemn threats to politicians. Megan Taros, who claimed to have lived in the same complex as Dos Reis, said it is unlikely that this crime was politically motivated based on his past behavior. To respond to the allegations, Lake held a press conference last Thursday and blasted Hobbs and the fake news media, she said, for perpetuating claims she was responsible for the incident. Lake said it is no joke when someone gets broken into, and clarified that her comparison between this case and Jussie Smollett was not to suggest the crime was staged, but that it was a story used to make Republicans look bad. She said if reporters had wanted, instead of covering Hobbs' statement immediately, they would have seen this was just an ordinary burglary, but wanted the opportunity to bash Lake, who is currently leading in the polls. When questioned about the burglary by the press after the incident, Hobbs refused to talk. Polls show Kari Lake in the lead by a few points. We'll have more details on the U.S. Senate race after this. Welcome back. In the U.S. Senate race between incumbent U.S. Senator Mark Kelly, a Democrat, and GOP nominee Blake Masters, Kelly has apparently lost his lead. Real Clear Politics now calls the race a toss-up. This is important because if the GOP takes this seat in Arizona away from the Democrats, that means that the U.S. Senate will likely have a Republican majority come January 2023. Kelly has been unable to shake the charge that he's a rubber stamp for President Biden's unpopular border and inflation policies. And a Kelly staffer was caught on video by Project Veritas, confirming that Kelly is playing both sides against the middle on the issue of abortion. Now, Axios is reporting that last-minute millions are arriving for Arizona's Blake Masters. Here's their story. Millions of last-minute dollars are flooding into Arizona to prop up Republican Senate nominee Blake Masters after a key group aligned with GOP leader Mitch McConnell declined to help him in this race. That substantial sum, dumped largely into TV ads this week and next, was prompted by the recent private polling showing Masters closing on incumbent Mark Kelly in a race that could help determine control of the upper chamber. The Club for Growth's cash infusion and significant spending by other deep-pocketed GOP allies, including tech billionaire Peter Thiel, is helping to fill a void left by Republicans' top Senate super PAC, which has no plans, apparently, to spend on Masters' behalf in the final days of the race. The Club's ad, which began airing in English and Spanish last week, focuses on inflation. Kelly, it says, supports Biden administration policies, quote, causing prices in Arizona to boil higher than almost any other state. What they're saying, Club for Growth President Dave McIntosh told Axios in an interview that Masters' negatives, quote, had already been out there for months, but Kelly has been left untouched. So, McIntosh said, we decided we could spend money telling people about Kelly, making his negatives, connecting him with Biden, and that would help Blake Masters and give him a chance to win. The big picture is this. The Club for Growth's substantial ad buy complements a flood of other GOP money into the race in recent weeks. Saving Arizona, a super PAC largely financed by Peter Thiel, kicked off a $3.7 million ad campaign this week, following a $2.5 million donation from Thiel earlier this month. Thiel played a big role in funding Masters through the primary, spending $15 million to help him get across the finish line, along with Trump's endorsement. A political arm of the Heritage Foundation has spent more than $7 million backing Masters and attacking Kelly since last month. Senate GOP leaders, including McConnell, considered Masters a lackluster candidate who would have a hard time winning a general election, even in an environment tilted heavily towards Republicans. Thiel and the McConnell-allied Senate Leadership Fund attempted to broker an agreement to match spending on Masters' behalf, but the deal fell through this month. In a statement, Kelly spokesperson Sarah Guggenheimer touted his work on manufacturing, energy production, and drug price reform. Quote, "No lies from a super PAC will distort what Arizonans know to be true. Senator Kelly, unlike Blake Masters, will always have their backs," she wrote. And that's what Axios wrote. Republicans are betting, however, that the red wave across the country will help sweep Masters to an upset victory on Tuesday over incumbent Mark Kelly and pave the way to a Republican majority in the U.S. Senate. We'll have more when we get back. Welcome back. Here's an odd story out of Pima County. An Arizona state court has shut down a multi-million-dollar subsidy to a high-altitude balloon flight company. This according to a Center Square story republished at the Arizona Sun-Times. Pima County officials violated Arizona state law by giving a company a multi-million-dollar subsidy. An Arizona appellate court ruled recently. The Goldwater Institute filed a lawsuit challenging the legality of a deal made between Pima County and Worldview, a company that says it will take passengers on rides to the upper stratosphere using high-altitude balloons. The Goldwater Institute challenged the $15 million in public resources to benefit a private for-profit corporation. The county struck the deal in 2016, arguing that it would improve the Tucson area economy. However, the project failed to deliver the employment numbers it promised and has not taken any passengers on rides yet. The deal involved the county borrowing $15 million, using government-owned buildings as collateral, and then spending the money to construct a headquarters building, balloon manufacturing facility, and balloon launch pad. All of these things were for the exclusive use of Worldview. The company was expected to repay the $15 million with small monthly payments over 20 years. At the end of that span, the county would then sell the building to Worldview for $10. In its decision, the Court of Appeals found the latter part of the deal to be the most objectionable. The judges wrote that the buildings would likely be worth $14 million then, so it makes little sense to sell them for, 0.0000007% of the value of the facilities. Quote, "We find it difficult to believe that a facility with an approximate value of $14 million in 2036 can fairly be exchanged for $10 without violating our constitutional proscription against subsidies or gifts to private entities," the judges wrote. Article 9 of the Arizona Constitution says counties may, quote, "never give or loan their credit in the aid of or make any donation or grant by subsidy or otherwise to any individual, association, or corporation," end quote. The Goldwater Institute says that this is the strongest corporate welfare ban in the country, and that the organization, quote, "has pioneered enforcement of the prohibition protecting taxpayers against schemes to enrich private interests at public expense," end quote. The Goldwater Institute first began opposing this subsidy way back in 2016. The opposition involved 3 stages of litigation. First, the Goldwater Institute challenged the county's cut rate lease of the property. Then the county's violation of Arizona's procurement statutes through its backroom deal with the architect and the contractor. And finally, the constitutional issue decided by the court this week. The courts upheld the legality of the lease rates, but, quote, "a trial judge found that county officials disregarded the procurement laws when hiring the contractor and architect," this according to the Goldwater Institute. For technical reasons, an appellate court vacated that decision. The decision could be appealed to the Arizona Supreme Court, but the Goldwater Institute says that would be a bad idea for Pima County. Quote, "It seems well past time for Pima County officials to admit this entire deal was both illegal and foolhardy," end quote, the Goldwater Institute wrote. Quote, "County governments exist to protect the rights of citizens and allow them to pursue their own business interests in their own way, not to pick winners and losers in the marketplace or gamble with taxpayer money. When they do, the consequence is often that taxpayer money simply floats away." We'll have more after this. Finally, in the news tonight, another Liz Cheney story we just can't resist. Remember, Congresswoman Liz Cheney, a Republican from Wyoming, has been a big Trump critic throughout his presidency, voted to impeach him, and was defeated soundly in the GOP primary for Wyoming's only congressional seat back in July, about 66% to 29%. Following the release of a $500,000 TV ad on Friday from Liz Cheney's Political Action Committee, urging Arizona voters to stay away from Republican nominee Kari Lake and Mark Finchem, Lake said her campaign received a huge boost in donations. Lake said that since the ad was released, her campaign received $300,000 in donations. Quote, "We just hit $300,000 raised in a single day. Shout out to Liz Cheney, my biggest fundraiser yet," Lake tweeted out last week. Lake also sent a letter to Cheney thanking her for the, quote, "generous contribution." Quote, "Thank you, Liz Cheney, for your generous in-kind contribution to my campaign. Your recent television ad urging Arizonans not to vote for me is doing just the opposite," Lake said in a letter to Cheney. Quote, "Our campaign donations are skyrocketing, and our website nearly crashed from traffic as people rushed to learn more about my plan to put Arizona first and join our historic political movement." This TV ad, entitled Honor, is the first to come from Cheney's leadership PAC, quote, "The Great Task." The commercial recycles statements and footage of Cheney speaking at an event titled Courage in American Leadership on the Arizona State University campus. Quote, "I don't know that I've ever voted for a Democrat, but if I lived in Arizona, I absolutely would," end quote, Cheney said in the ad. And if you care about the survival of our republic, we cannot give people power who will not honor elections, end quote. As reported by the Arizona Sun-Times, Lake responded to the ad with confidence that she's going to win come November 8th. Quote, "I will absolutely accept the results of a fair, honest, and transparent election," Lake told the Arizona Sun-Times. Quote, "I know that I am going to win. We have more than a political campaign. We have a movement. And I know the people of Arizona will never elect a racist and a coward like my opponent, Katie Hobbs. She's been convicted by 2 separate juries of being racist, and her cowardly decision not to debate showed the people of Arizona that she does not respect them," end quote. It is true that Lake and Finchem have questioned the 2020 election results. Lake has openly called President Joe Biden illegitimate, and Finchem, who was present at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, told 12 News that he joined the race for Secretary of State because of 2020 election results. However, Finchem said that if he is elected, his, quote, "partisan hat," end quote, would come off, and he would be willing to reach across the aisle. Quote, "My objective in this whole pursuit is to see to it that nobody has their thumb of influence on the scale of election justice," end quote, Finchem said while explaining his goals for the office. Lake has also vocally said she does not want voting policies that will aid one party over another. While speaking at the Clean Elections Commission gubernatorial, quote, "debate," Lake said, which, by the way, Hobbs did not attend, Lake said she wants to see a system where everyone can have confidence in election results, no matter what party they belong to. When asked if she were confident the November election would be honest and fair, she responded, no. Lake said her uncertainty is because of her incompetent Democrat opponent and current Secretary of State in Arizona, Katie Hobbs. Lake also said that a Republican victory does not automatically dismiss any election integrity concerns. Even if Lake wins, she said she would welcome a hand count of the results to ensure maximum transparency. A recent poll by Fox 10 shows Lake with a double-digit lead over Hobbs as Election Day draws near. That does it for this edition of Arizona Sun-Times Sunday. Be sure to tune in to our website, ArizonaSunTimes.com. That's ArizonaSunTimes.com for all the latest state and local news. I'm Michael Patrick Leahy. Thanks for joining us tonight.